where he said, you know, I was there, you know, how do you know I was there, I fought, you know, he was not nutty mystic, but it was good for battle, you know, if you want, sometimes being a mystic or something like that is very good for battle leadership. Because men want to believe in your invincibility and your genius and your ability to, you know, get through the situation and be victorious. And if you don't believe in yourself, they're not going to believe in you. You have to be able to go out in front of the troops and brave fire and not be wounded, not be killed. Washington, when he led his first military expedition with the British up to Fort Pitt, you know, stood in front of the contingent of men that he was leading, and he, you know, took British fire, and it went through all his garments. There were bullet holes, but nothing hit him. And the guy was never wounded in his life in any battle. You know, he had, you know, horses shot out from under him, his garments frayed and stuff like that. Grant was the same way. Stonewall Jackson was the same way. Lee was the same way. You have to be willing to get out there and do these things. To do that, you have to have some religious faith often. So having this kind of a religious faith, you'll find that the greatest warriors have very deep religious faith, and they think that God is the God of battles, that God is God that gives them the victory in the battles. They really think that. And there's an awful lot of military commanders who think that. And you know, it makes sense. You know, you just have to have something that you feel is protecting you. Otherwise, you don't have the courage to stand out there and face what you have to face and be a leader. So, you know, here in this book, God gives the victory always to the brave champions of Judaism, and we have this these apparitions. So then it goes on, chapter 3, to its beginning, not with Judas Maccabee, but when the holy city was inhabited in all peace and the laws were observed as perfectly as possible. The Dead Sea Scrolls are what, you know, the way of perfection. Jesus, unless your perfection exceeds the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall have no way into the kingdom of heaven. We want perfection through the piety of Onias the high priest and his hatred of evil. And everything was honored. A certain Simon of the course of Bilgah, another of the priestly courses, there were 24 in all. Judas, if you remember from Maccabees 1, is of the course of what? Yoyarib, which is the first priestly course. And I told you that those people who want to say that the Maccabees usurped the high priesthood from a previously legitimate line. All the Dead Sea Scrolls scholars try to make those arguments in order to show that the Maccabees are the wicked priests of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The reason I'm reading these things in such detail so that you have the basis on which to make your own judgment. The Maccabees, I can tell you, are not the wicked priests of the Dead Sea Scrolls, period. The Herodian priests are, period. The same priests who are the wicked priests in the Gospels are the same priests who are the wicked priests in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I think we'll be able to prove that. The reason they think that what they think, every book, every lecturer down in San Diego, everybody else like that, is because of their faulty paleography and archaeology and their pseudo-carbon dating results. Which are all what I would call external evidence, contradicted by internal evidence of the books and manuscripts themselves. So I've already told you that external evidence of that sort, based on the kind of manner of development that is used, is not strong enough to counter-indicate another otherwise contradictory result. That is, if there's something like they sacrifice to their standards and worship their weapons of war, the paleographic and carbon and other evidence is not strong enough to counter-indicate that. And I told you that some of the paleographic sequences that are used are based on straight line graphs. All of them are, that a schoolboy in 5th grade could do. but actually should be differential equations based on multiple variables, which would probably pop the biggest computer and grind it to a total halt. So in the best circumstances, they may have some close approximation to something, but in the worst, they tell you nothing. And I think we're talking about the worst, not the best, that these external pseudo-tools tell you very little, if nothing. In any event, the point is, why we're doing this is to show how complicated this situation is. So this Onias, the high priest, we'll see that he is the same high priest. If you looked at the book of Ecclesiasticus, I probably after the break will just read you quickly that passage in Ecclesiasticus, which is an actual dated book where Onias' father is mentioned. So that book is dated in the period of Onias and his father, who is called in rabbinic literature Simeon the Tzaddik, Simeon the Righteous. And so I will, try to show you. This is a previously extant line that is just using the name Simeon and Onias back and forth. In any case, he is administering the city at this time under Seleucid control. And it's at this time that there were problems over the treasury, and another backsliding priest called from the course of Bilga wants to take over things and starts making trouble for this Onias. As I said, the Dead Sea Scroll theorists try to make out that the Maccabees usurped the high priesthood. This isn't the case. This book thinks that the progression from Onias to Judas is direct, and there is no spiritual interruption of any kind. On the contrary, it's these backsliding priests who are trying to usurp the high priesthood. The idea that the Maccabees usurped high priesthood, I told you last time, comes from Frank Moore Cross, the doyen of scroll studies. He still is living. All his students have the best positions in the field. He teaches at Harvard in an emeritus situation. He hires and fires all the best people, worst people. Anyone who's hired in any position, they write to him and ask him what he thinks of this person. And so he basically controls who gets jobs, who doesn't.